Change sounds monumental, and we all have our own relationship with the word change. So let's leave that in the potential negative connotation silo. Shift sounds easier. And quite honestly, the book is easy. Parenting doesn't have to be difficult when we have a couple of tools in our toolbox. As you know, that's what we offer our families with, the Parenting Blueprint. And aside from personalities, there are some other tools that we can put in our toolbox, and they're not monumental. They're just shifts.
Welcome to Real Talk with the Parenting Blueprint coaches, where we discuss all aspects of parenting using the foundation of understanding personality dynamics to raise independent, responsible, and resilient children. My name is Karen Wagner, founder of Teaching Our Youth and the Parenting Blueprint. Let's dig right in with today's topic and have some real talk with the Parenting Blueprint coaches. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Real Talk with the Parenting Blueprint coaches. As you know, I'm Karen Wagner, and I am here with Janet Krebs, who you already know. She's been on plenty of episodes as well. But, Janet is a speaker, she's an author, and she is a parenting blueprint strategist. But the reason why I'm so excited to have her on with us today is she has published another book. So I know, Janet, this is not your first book, but I really wanted to share her concept with you today. You are going to love the title of this. It is called Your Amazing Itty Bitty Guide to Parenting Like a Leader. And Janet, ever since we started working together, your whole framework has been parent leadership. And you had coined this phrase, the parenting shift. Okay. And I just loved how you did that. But as I was reading, all the topics that you cover in the Itty Bitty Guide, it's such powerful topics that you discuss. So first of all, what led you to write this Itty Bitty Guide?
It's a great question. Aside from, I think I should write a book. Like lots of people sit and say, I'm going to write a book, and then they just never do. Let's leave it at this, because everybody can relate to this. You buy a new air fryer, coffee maker, whatever it is, and you take it home, you take it out of the box, and what is in there? The booklet of what to do with it, right? Like the how-to instructions. You get more stinking directions with a coffee maker than you do with a human that you're bringing home from the hospital. And quite honestly, Karen, I believe that as a parent, we prepare for the birth, but we don't prepare. Like we prepare to have a baby, but we're not having babies. We're not raising babies. We're raising adults. And so the help just stops. And quite honestly, we are organically expected to know exactly what to do at every single blip and blurb. And there's too many. We can't be expected to know it all. So I wrote the book. It's a little itty bitty book, guys. It's a little booklet. It's just a conversation starter. But just to give people an idea that there's information out there. You don't have to know it all. That's really the why. It was just you don't have to know it all.
And Janet, I totally agree with what you're saying. And I have been coining that phrase that no one teaches us how to raise a human, and with all the information that's out there. And even, my daughter has her first child, and I was able to go to, I think it was a 3rd month checkup, and you go in, you get weighed, you hit these milestones. But what I find, and you may experience this with your children, after the age of 2, it's bye-bye. And it's you're kind of left on your own. So you're kind of checking in with the pediatrician, and it's all about them being healthy and the schedules and their weight and, they're eating well and the milestones that they're hitting. But then they become little human beings, right? And where I struggled with, because, I was able to get the nursing down. I was able to get sleep schedules down. Not that I, was all perfect. You still had to get that. But then their little personalities popped up, and I was like, what is happening here? You know what I mean? And everything started and no one wanted to talk about that. And
Right.
so I agree that that's why we do what we do, is to give parents some guidelines and a blueprint on how to do that. So you talk about making the parenting shift. So when you talk about that shift, what is that shift?
That's not a one size fits all answer, quite honestly. And I use the word shift because change sounds monumental, and we all have our own relationship with the word change. So let's leave that in the potential negative connotation silo. Shift sounds easier. And quite honestly, the book is easy. Parenting doesn't have to be difficult when when we have a couple of tools in our toolbox. As you know, that's what we offer our families with, the Parenting Blueprint. And aside from personalities, there are some other tools that we can put in our toolbox, and they're not monumental. They're just shifts. And so I use that word because it's just easier, and because shifts are the ones that are not obvious, and they can be very subtle.
No, I love that. I love that because, I call it little tweaks, and things that we do. I can be working with the family and they're doing something a certain way. And it's just one little, you want to call it shift, I call it a tweak. And then all of a sudden it smooths out the wrinkles. So I love that you keep it simple. So one of the things that you talked about in your chapters is putting family first without apology. So share a little bit about that concept because I was very intrigued by that.
Well, thanks for dating me, and that's okay. I have, without apology, at 61, I remember the good old days and we remember, there's all of the old family driven television shows. And like, there was a time when family was first, and we've gotten away from that. We're busy with the busy. People are out there, and again, unapologetically making a life, making a living, living their lives, and all of that. And like, we feel bad when we take a sick day because our kids are sick, right? Or, I mean, like, you can come up with so many examples. You can't go on the field trip with your kid because you have to go to work. And I'm just going to be an advocate and stand up for people, families in particular, that are just going to say, you know what? Those are my people, and they matter most of me. And I am going to give them the best of me rather than the leftovers at the end of the day of work. And whatever that means, whatever that looks like, but we have to stop apologizing for wanting to be with family. And I'm a very intentional person. So I'm always going to use words, strong language, like unapologetically, because that's a shift, right? Right there. That's a shift. I'm not going to be apologetic about it.
Yeah. But it
And
is so hard. And as women in the workplace, and some dads probably go through the same thing. There's a
sure.
level of expectation that may go beyond the boundaries that we would like being able to leave on time or come in a little later because your kid has an appointment, or there's a game and you need to be, like those types of things can really pull on you. And to have employers or workplaces that are flexible, that you will get the work done, you will make that, and to not have to apologize for family first.
And
right?
so right there, that sounds big, because people are like, well, Janet, that's like la la land. That's an ideal perspective of the world. And so let's start with, when you say, how do you do it?
Yeah.
Let's start with putting the boundary for when your workday ends. Yep. So let's not even talk about an employer needing to make accommodations for you, because they may not be that kind of an employer. But if your shift ended at 5 o'clock and they're still texting you at 6 o'clock, and you're at your daughter's performance at school, are you expected to answer that? Or can you say, without apology, put your phone on D&D and not answer it? And if you're called to the carpet, it's like, I'm sorry, that was after hours and I was otherwise occupied with my family. Hard stop, no apology.
Yeah. I love it. And it is setting those boundaries. And as you know, through the personalities, there are some personalities that can be fine with setting those boundaries and be firm with it. And then there's others that are like, oh, but what if the people pleasers, right? You know what I mean? I don't want to disappoint anybody or let them down. And that personality tends to be the hardest ones that will feel the guilt of
And
not setting
those
those
are,
boundaries or saying true to that when they truly do need to that. Because of course, the supportive personality is probably the most relational, nurturing of all of the styles. But because they're people pleasers, they really do get pulled in with that. So I love what you're saying, putting family first without apology. I love that. And I think as women, we need to get over that guilt of that, of putting family first. You
but if
also
we
talk about,
don't, we have to be the ones to do it.
oh, for sure. You're right.
Society is not going
Not
to
gonna
say,
do.
oh, by the way, there's a new campaign,
Yeah.
we give you permission. They're not going to do
No,
that. We
no.
are the ones that
We
have
need to
to
set their
stand
boundaries.
up and make the change.
I
And I'm
agree.
talking about systemic change because we understand that that's hard. How about just within your world? Because that you can control.
Yes, I love that. Putting family first without apology. And mamas, it's okay. It's okay to do that.
More than okay. Actually, it's not only is it more than okay, your kids are demanding you to do that. They're begging you to do that.
And they're watching us and the boundaries that we set.
They are.
Because even though we may not be saying it, they're still watching what we're doing. And when you make family the priority, they will make their family a priority.
And I really believe that.
Yeah, I truly believe that. So you've always taken the approach of parent leadership. So why do leadership skills matter in parenting? Because I know you're great at pulling those two together.
Well, I did a lot of work in HR, human resources for a good many years, and I did a lot of work with transferability of skills. So like that was my thing. I thought that was really cool. And I did a lot of career coaching in my life, and I've done some really cool things. The reason why I believe it's so imperative is that, well, let's just break it down. The skills they're not leadership skills. Like when you look, like anybody can go to Google University for crying out loud. And you see the lists, top 7, top 15, top 60, right? When you look at them, I am so sorry, but let's pull them out of the silo of leadership skills. They're not soft skills. They're not hard skills. They're human skills. They're life skills. And when we blur the silos in which we are compartmentalizing the skill set and make them transferable into everything that we do in our world, I believe that's where we will make change.
I love that. So, just from your perspective, and this may be an opinion, but from your perspective, what do you feel may be the most difficult leadership skills that parents struggle with in the home? Like, there's certain ways that we may interact in the office or in the corporate world or wherever we're working, but why does it feel like it's so much more difficult to do at home?
Because we don't think of them as imperative skills. We're still compartmentalizing.
Mhm.
You come home from the office or whatever it is that you do in the world, and you just think it's family. And that's my mission. That's why I wrote the book. There is no, like, it doesn't matter where you are, you own the skill set. You are the legacy of that, and everyone's watching you. So be it. Step into it. You asked, what is the most difficult part of that? And so the direct answer is, I don't believe that people see themselves as leaders in the home
Mhm.
because we have
Going with that.
for
Yes. Talk about
decades
that. Yes.
kept leadership in professional worlds
Yeah.
in the corner office. And I'm pulling it out of the corner office and placing it in the home.
So
So
give me
y'all
an
should
example
be
of that.
really.
Give me an example of how that would cross over, because I totally agree with you. It's and I've worked with educators who have been clients and say that I can manage the 30 kids in my classroom, but I can't deal with the 2 in my house. So why is that so difficult to do? So what would be an example of a leadership skill that we may be very successful with in our corporate career, but really feel as though we're falling flat in our home? I'm sure you've got more than one.
I-
All right, give me
yeah.
a couple then, Yeah.
I think, in answer to your direct question, why? I think because it's more personal at home, right? There are many parents that totally see themselves or see their kids as a reflection of who they are. So, for example, if a child got a bad grade, I must be a bad parent. No, it has nothing to do with you being a bad parent. The kid got a bad grade. Let's figure out what scholastically is missing from this equation. Don't default to it's something that you did. So, I'm going to answer that in the other way. Like, what is a great leadership skill that we should have at home? And I don't, me very personally, I don't use the word should very often. It's a word that I really don't like at all. It's very conditional. But I do believe that good leaders have a vision, right? And their job is to recruit the people and get everybody inspired and empowered to join them in that vision. Why do parents feel as though they shouldn't have a vision within their own family? And it's not what I want my kid to be when they grow up. It's for them to be who it is that they are supposed to be, and then be an amazing detective and observer to figure out what they are displaying behaviorally, physically, emotionally, mentally, that's going to support their goals as they get older. So my favorite, like in a lot in my coaching, is the F, which is the future, right? For me, future is the vision. So in corporate America, it's called a vision. In my coaching, it's future. It's the same thing. It's synonymous, right? We have to understand where we want our kids to go. We have to know what the desired outcome is that we see for them, not for us, for them. So I flipped your question to answer
that was
positively rather than negatively.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, because you're right. We do have, within a corporation or somewhere you work, there is a vision, mission, and have we established that in our home? So we may have some values that we want to incorporate in the way we live our life and the way we raise our kids, but are we communicating that? And I do the same thing with coaching. Is the first thing I want to know is, what are your values? What do you want to instill? And then how do we go about doing that and instilling that with our kids? Because each one is wired differently. Communication, their emotional needs, and a way that we can adapt to make that happen. Like you said, raising them to be the individuals, not what we think they should be, but who they were meant to be, but within those values and guidelines. And if we don't have that vision, if we don't have that mission, then I find, only from some of the clients I've worked with, it's kind of wishy-washy. That's why we need to set, why is it? Why does this bother you when this happens? Because it's going against some of your values of what you may have wanted to instill within your family. And so I love the fact that, even I'm sure as you're working with clients, that you want to know that. What are your values? What are your mission? What do you stand for?
I actually included in the book, there's some information in there about connection. I really value connection. And people are like, well, how do you do that? I love family dinner. It's also in the book. I love family dinner. I was an advocate for family dinner. I scheduled my kids' activities around the fact that so that we could have dinner. I'm going to say every night. I know that's unrealistic in today's world, but if you could do 5 out of 7 nights a week to have family dinner, I would almost, I would promise. Guarantee is a strong word, but I would promise you that the family dynamic would change. And it's not because you're breaking bread. It's not the dinner. It's the connection that occurs at the dinner. And so that goes back to, again, without apology. I very much valued connection. I very much valued the tradition of sitting down and breaking bread with family. And I will say, my own kids are now 28 and 31. 32. Woo, that was fun. We still value that. still that, I mean, they don't even live around, but boy, I'll tell you, as many times a year as we can, well, we'll have dinner. We'll have, and it's a big deal, and it doesn't have to be fancy, but it's a big deal. It's not the dinner, people. It's the connection that's made sitting around a table and sharing and breaking bread.
And can I tell you how that has really gone away? And again, with the clients I work with, I talk about the value and importance of that, because as they get older, they are going to get busier. I, like you, always valued that connection time, especially when they were younger in elementary school, and then middle school was good, but then we start having practices and things like that. So then it got a little bit fragmented. But if anything, it was always Sunday dinner. You know what I mean? They had jobs, but it was always at Sunday dinner, to try and keep that consistency and that tradition that we will meet and we will connect at the dinner table. And with the digital devices and of course fragmented schedules, and I don't want to be critical of anybody, but you said something else that I truly respect and respond to as well, is we need to be intentional with that. Like, we need to make that happen, right? It's not just going to happen if we don't make it happen. So when everybody gets their dinner and then they're sitting in front of the TV, or they're just watching on their devices and they're eating in front, that is not connection. And then we wonder why we're disconnected after a few years, is because we have not been intentional for that connection. And so that is a value that I really hold true, as you do too, that we really need to get parents back to that so that they can continue with connection. So you talk about how to balance self-care, structure, and independence. So that is a balance of that, right? We want to raise our kids to be independent, but we need to take care of ourselves. I mean, I was the worst at self-care when I was raising my kids, until, I would crash and burn, and then I'd have to but I wasn't catching on to the cycle for a while that, you're doing this to yourself, until I finally realized that it wasn't, it was required. It wasn't just an optional thing, because you are no good to anybody else. But having that structure in the home, but also raising our kids by opening those gates and giving them the independence. And I think some parents kind of struggle with that balance, and you talk about that. So can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Which one, self-care or balance?
Well, I think, all of them. I mean, how do they all tie together? Because I think it is a balance of taking care of ourselves, and a feeling as though that I'm not taking care of my kids when I'm nurturing me, when we got to get over that guilt, right?
I must have been, maybe I was just a tough mom, but I didn't. Here's what I was going to say. I didn't feel guilt about it, because, for me, it was going to the gym straight from work once they got to the age that they could come home on their own. It got to the point that if I didn't go for a while, or if I was in a bad mood, they would say, "Mom, did you go to the gym today?" Right? Because they knew,
right?
They knew that was something that just cleared my head after work, and I was a better human when I released all of that and then came home. It was like me setting the stage for part 2 of my day, which was being a mom, doing the dinner thing, and all of that we do in the evenings. It's a non-negotiable. I don't know how else to, it's just a non-negotiable. And it doesn't have to be the gym. That happened to have been my thing at the time, but it could just be sitting in your room for 10 minutes, reading a book, or taking a walk around the block, or whatever it is that fuels you. I don't care what that is, just whatever it is, close the door, you are unavailable. It's an imperative. So you talk about the shift. The shift is, I will be a better human to my family. I will be a better servant to my family when I take care of myself. We hear that on the airplane, that's the best analogy, right? Put the mask on yourself first before you put it on your child. It's the same concept. There's a reason why they say that. You can't serve others if you come from a place of empty. You just can't do it. As far as independence goes, I am so old school on this one, Karen, and I can't even apologize about it, because I've seen it work so many times. We have to stop doing things for kids that they can do for themselves. Period, hard stop. I punctuate the sentence. I would challenge anybody in that conversation. If they can't do it by themselves, then of course our job is to cultivate and foster the skills necessary for them to do so when ready, when developmentally appropriate. But if you've got a kid that, I mean, I'm sorry, if you've got teens at home and you're still doing their laundry, I'm just confused, and I would love to have a conversation to ask what it is that you love about that. And I have spoken to moms that say it's the last thing I can do for them to take that off their plate. Cool. Do they know how to do the laundry? Because if they do, then I'm on board with that's your choice. That's cool. But if they don't know how to do it, and then they leave for college and they only come home to bring you 5 loads of laundry, I'm not cool with that.
Expecting you're going to do it.
I just thought, there's something that there's a conversation that needs to happen in between point A and point B on that. So, and I can't, what was the third one? Self-care.
Structure.
Huh?
Structure.
Yeah. Well, that's in all of it.
Yeah. All of it. Yeah. I agree with that. The independence. And I think that I fell into that trap of doing because it's easier for me to get it done. And then I realized, but then I start to resent the fact that I'm doing everything and they're doing nothing, right? So, but what was that happening? Because I allowed that to happen. So it was time to I call it pass the baton, and teaching them those skills that they are going to do one meal a week, you know what I mean? Or every other week, like we'd rotate some of the kids around that they were responsible for that. And the laundry was not only just doing the laundry, but time management of the laundry, making sure you're doing laundry in enough time that you have your uniform to go to work or uniform for sports, because that's not my gig. You know what I mean? I'm not responsible to make sure your stuff is clean for your events. That's for you to do. And that was the other thing we had, because we had multiple kids in the house and you just can't leave the stuff in the washing machine and be gone for the day. You know what I mean? Like, it was, if you're going to start it, you need to finish it. But it was really setting up that structure and expectations of being able to.
You say that about starting and finishing. Once the routine is in and they're doing their own thing, think about the opportunities for when you do finish a load for somebody, you switch the laundry for them because you wanted to do your own personal load. And then they come home and they're like, oh, you put my load in the dryer. Thank you. You're mother of the year.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not kidding. Like, you're mother of the year.
Unless you have a kid that said, not all my stuff goes in the dryer.
Then you should
and that's on you, right? Exactly. So we have to have those conversations.
Right. And you have to plan better about not leaving.
Right.
You have to share the appliance with other people in your family.
Absolutely.
The other thing about laundry, my kids did laundry in first and fourth grade. They're that far apart in kindergarten and fourth grade. Anyway, it doesn't matter. You know what I had to let go of? Them going to school in crumpled clothing because they used the dryer as the dresser. Now, they worked together, which was really cool, to get their stuff cleaned and done, but they often left it in the dryer. Didn't always make it upstairs. And so they would go down and pick their clothes out of the dryer, which of course looked pretty crumpled after 2 or 3 days. And I had to let that go.
Yep. Same thing. My kids would live out of the basket. They'd put it in their basket, take it up, and then live out of the basket. So you're right. I had to let it go. When it bothers them or somebody makes a comment to them, then they will make that shift, right? That maybe I do need to fold it or hang it up when it comes out. Right.
There again, it's not about you. It's about them.
Yep.
And that's a big shift.
And letting it go.
Removing the ego. It's not a reflection of you. It's a reflection of them just not putting their laundry away. It's not a reflection of you as a bad parent. You're teaching your kids a valuable life skill, and they're not going to be perfect at it right out of the gate. Let them have a chance to learn how to do it.
And there's a lot of things, a lot of those things when it comes to car repair. And when my kids had bank accounts, taking and get their bank accounts, and no one wanted to keep track of the records and how many things got bounced because they weren't, and I had to be sad and not mad and take them to the bank, and they had to figure it out or pay it off or whatever it was, but not own it, not bail them out. Just let them figure it out. And so you have so many tips. You have 15 tips on this.
15, yeah.
15 in the Itty Bitty book. So if you were to sum up the top ones that would really, what I call the big domino that kind of helps everything in line? What would be the ones that you feel are the ones we need to put in place first? Because I want everybody to get your book because it is a quick read, because it's an itty bitty guide, and there's so much that I'm sure that you're laying out in a quick, to the point. That's what I love about you. You know, you're really to the point and just lay it out there. But if you were to sum it up with just a couple of things, what would you share with the audience?
Well, let's just be very clear. It's a not only like this is it, it's a little skinny book. So I call it, it's a booklet, actually. It's a booklet. It's a conversation starter. They're Cliff's notes. Somebody will open it. You can just read, shift 8. The unwelcome guest is electronic. You're going to get 2 pages of just ideas of just like, and then sentence starters that you can explore further by yourself, on your own, with whoever it is that you get for support. So let's just put that out on the table. This is not going to be the, 10-step program for anything in each chapter. I'm going to stick by the vision, because desired outcomes, knowing where you're going with everything, like let's say, for me, I'll just use myself as an example. I'll throw myself under the bus. My goal for my kids was for them to leave the house and never return. Not as guests, but I wanted them to be able to live on their own, go to college, do life on their own, and not feel like they had to come home because they, for whatever reason. I wanted that for them, which is why I was such a stickler for laundry, for understanding how to cook. We did a lot of discussions about finances. I have a home economy system when the kids were growing up, which isn't necessarily what you're thinking, but it was a concept of checks and balances. All of those things were contributing to them leaving the house with the skills that they needed to be okay out in this big, wide, scary world. So it's kind of like, even if you lose your cool and you're sitting on the side of your bed and you're saying, oh my gosh, I have so much regret about me just yelling and like losing all of that right now. If my goal was for them to leave, what was actionable at that moment? I need for them to understand that I'm human. And so therefore I'm going to apologize. And I want for them to know that they don't have to be perfect all the time. And that even parents don't have all the answers. And so I knew that, so that's in alignment with what I want for them as adults to get from that particular moment. So I would say everything. I'm an intentional person. Everything I did was toward a desired outcome.
Love it.
And it's not that hard. Like people are like, oh, Janet, what did you do? Just diagnose everything no, it all just, after time, it just becomes what you do and how you do what you do. Honestly.
That's when the shift takes place. That's why I talk about transformation. When I'm working with clients and we get to the end of the 90 days, it's kind of like, I don't even know who that mama was because of the shift that had been made or the transformation that has been made.
Exactly.
And so I love it. So I am so excited about this book. I'm so excited to share this with our audience. I am going to be providing a link for you to be able to purchase Janet's book on Amazon. So go check it out.
Very inexpensive.
It is not. And it's going to be bullet pointed. And I love the fact that you did it in a short way, just to get people thinking about what it is that they want to do and how they want to implement it in their homes. But the most important thing is understanding the mission and the values of what you want to instill in your kids, and everything else should align.
Yeah, it was really interesting. In here, I put my contact information, like my website and stuff. And I think I actually even put my email in here. And my editor and my publisher, they were like, are you sure you want to do that? Mm-hmm. Yes. Because if you've got something to say, I walk my talk. Like I see you and I hear you. And we
And I
are,
love the fact that you're available to support those who may have questions on how to implement. That's why we do what we do. We can put concepts out there, but sometimes, and even me in my early parenting years, I mean, I read a lot of books and did a lot of things, but it was the application of it that I started tripping over. Why? Because it was different. It was difficult. It was change. It was the shift until I get to the point where I just change what I'm doing. And I often say a lot of times we need to drag those negative files to the trash can and delete and replace them with what you're talking about now with these tried and true principles of raising responsible young adults. So, Janet,
I
I'm
just
so
want to
happy.
remove the dread.
Yeah.
Like there's so much dread oftentimes, and it's not like these are gifts. Like these kids are gifts from God. Like, let's be excited about that.
Mhm.
And that's our responsibility.
I
There's
love seeing who my kids became, and if I had started having kids younger, I probably had more just because I like seeing what came out of the gene pool. But I'm good with what I had. We got a blended family now. There's plenty of them now, but they are so uniquely different, and to be able to see them become who they were meant to be, and know that we were just a part of guiding them. We get to that point where we're not the authoritative parenting; we are guiding them, which is what you've done so well with your family, is being able to guide the kids. Giving them the principles, giving them the opportunity, allowing them to fail if they did, and being there to pick them up and problem solve so that they can learn from those things.
and guess what you just described? An exemplary leader.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why I call it leadership.
Yes.
Exactly what you just said. That was a beautiful description of a leader that most people would embrace working with and for.
Yeah, it's true. And I wasn't always that way though. I wasn't always that way. But it's true. When we are in the workplace, we coach and we guide people to help them become better. Where when we're home with our kids, we start disciplining, criticizing, condemning, judging, and all that stuff. And that, we wouldn't want that from someone in the workplace. Why are we doing this to our children? And there were times where I had to think about that. If I didn't want somebody treating me that way, why was I treating my children that way? I had to check my triggers as to why I was reacting because I had an expectation.
We just need to remember we are guides when they fall, when they succeed, all of what you just said, but we are guides.
Yep. Yep.
We're not bossy bosses, we're leaders.
Right. And guiding them through and developing that relationship of trust and mutual respect with all of your principles will bring us to that. So, Jen, I'm so excited for your book. I'm so excited for the audience to learn more about this book. Click that link, get Janet's book. If you enjoyed this episode, again, don't forget to like, subscribe, share with your friends, and join us for another episode of Real Talk with the Parenting Blueprint Coaches. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye for now.